What happens when a desperate gamble in a card game sets off a chain of events that tears two lives apart and forces them into a union no one wanted? This isn't just about survival in the untamed West. This is about two people caught in a web of lies so thick they can't see the truth until it's almost too late. Stay until the end, because the final revelation will leave you speechless. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what you think happens when power, manipulation, and forbidden love collide. Arizona Territory, 1876. The stagecoach jolted to a stop in a cloud of red dust, and Catherine Morgan stepped down onto ground that felt like the edge of the world. 23 years old, auburn hair tied back severely, green eyes scanning a landscape of sagebrush and distant mesas. She carried one worn carpetbag and a letter that had destroyed her life. The driver pointed toward a cluster of adobe buildings shimmering in the heat. "Fort's that way. Someone'll meet you." Catherine knew better than to hope. No one was meeting her. They were collecting property, human collateral for a debt she never owed. 6 weeks earlier, her uncle, the only family she had left, had been caught embezzling from a railroad company. Before the authorities could arrest him, he'd made a deal with a territorial judge named Cyrus Blackwell. The judge had connections to the Apache through an intermediary, a man who brokered peace treaties and land agreements. Blackwell needed leverage over a particular Apache band refusing to sign relocation papers. So her uncle offered Catherine, not as payment, as strategy. She would marry Red Hawk, nephew of the Apache chief Standing Bear. The marriage would bind Blackwell to the tribe through family ties, giving him negotiating power. In exchange, her uncle walked free, and Catherine got to keep breathing. She'd tried to run, made it as far as Santa Fe before Blackwell's men found her, and dragged her back with threats that made her blood freeze. Her uncle was already gone, vanished like smoke. She was utterly alone. And now, walking toward that fort with the desert sun hammering down, Catherine understood something fundamental. This wasn't about marriage. This was about control. And she was the weapon they'd use to break a proud people's resistance. A soldier met her at the gate, young, uncomfortable, avoiding her eyes. "Miss Morgan, this way." Inside the fort's courtyard, 3 men waited. A weathered Apache elder with fierce eyes and a face like carved mahogany. Judge Blackwell himself, imposing in his black suit despite the heat. And a younger Apache man whose stillness was more threatening than any movement could be. Red Hawk. He stood apart from the others, dressed in a mix of traditional clothing and army surplus pants, arms crossed over his chest, his dark eyes fixed on Catherine with an intensity that made her want to step backward. But she held her ground. Blackwell smiled, oily and triumphant. "Miss Morgan, welcome. I trust your journey was—" "Where is my uncle?" Catherine interrupted. "That matter is resolved," Blackwell said smoothly. "Your concern now is fulfilling your end of our arrangement." "I made no arrangement," Catherine said, her voice steady, despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "You threatened and coerced me." Red Hawk's eyes flickered with something, surprise, maybe respect, before his expression hardened again. "Nevertheless," Blackwell continued, "the agreement stands. You will marry Red Hawk according to both Apache custom and territorial law. The ceremony will take place tomorrow." Standing Bear spoke, his English heavily accented but clear. "This is not our way. Marriage should be chosen, not forced. But the judge promises protection for my people if we accept." Catherine turned to Red Hawk. "And you? Do you accept being used like this?" His jaw tightened. "I accept protecting my people by any means necessary. Even this." The words hit her like a slap. Not rejection exactly, but acknowledgement that she was a burden. A sacrifice he'd make for duty. "Then we understand each other," Catherine said quietly. "Neither of us wants this. But here we are." That night, Catherine was given a small room in the fort. She lay awake on a thin cot, listening to distant coyotes and trying not to think about tomorrow. About binding herself legally to a man who saw her as an obligation. About becoming a pawn in Blackwell's scheme to steal Apache land. but somewhere in the darkness, a thought formed. If she was going to be used as a weapon, maybe she could turn the blade. She just had to figure out how. The ceremony happened at dawn in a clearing between the fort and the Apache camp. It was brief, awkward, and felt more like a business transaction than a wedding. Red Hawk spoke the Apache vows with no emotion. Catherine repeated words in a language she didn't understand, given to her phonetically by an interpreter. Blackwell watched with satisfaction. Standing Bear watched with resignation. The handful of Apache witnesses watched with suspicion. When it was done, Red Hawk turned to Catherine. "You will stay in the women's lodge until I prepare a place for us." "I'm your wife now," Catherine said, testing the word. "Shouldn't I?" "You are my wife in name only," Red Hawk cut her off. "Nothing more. Do not expect what I cannot give." He walked away, leaving Catherine standing alone in the early light. An older Apache woman approached, her expression neutral but not unkind. "I am Pale Moon. You will stay with me and learn our ways." Over the following days, Catherine discovered the brutal reality of her situation. The Apache camp existed in an uneasy truce with the fort, dependent on government rations that came irregularly and often spoiled. The people moved between traditional ways and forced adaptation, caught between worlds. Pale Moon taught her basics: how to help with food preparation, where to fetch water, which plants were medicinal. The other women tolerated her but kept their distance. She was an outsider. Worse, she was a symbol of their compromised position. Red Hawk avoided her almost entirely. When he did appear, it was to fulfill minimal obligations, ensuring she had food, addressing practical concerns with terse efficiency. At night, he slept elsewhere, visiting the lodge only when necessary. Catherine lay awake those first weeks, wrestling with anger and helplessness. She'd expected hardship, but not this complete isolation, not being so thoroughly unwanted. But she also watched, and what she saw troubled her deeply. Blackwell visited the camp frequently, always with promises. More supplies coming, better rations, protection from encroaching settlers. But Catherine noticed the supplies never improved. The promises never materialized. Meanwhile, Blackwell spent hours in private meetings with Standing Bear, pressuring him to sign agreements, ceding more hunting grounds. "He's lying to them," Catherine told Pale Moon one evening as they worked. "The judge, he has no intention of helping." Pale Moon's hands never stopped their work. "We know, but what choice do we have? Without the fort's protection, settlers will drive us from what little land remains." "So, you trade land for empty promises?" "We trade land for survival. There is a difference." Catherine fell silent, understanding the impossible position these people were in, and understanding that her marriage to Red Hawk was just another form of manipulation, creating the illusion of alliance while Blackwell tightened his grip. That night, Red Hawk finally came to the lodge, not to sleep, but to retrieve something from his belongings. Catherine, unable to stay silent any longer, spoke. "Your uncle is making a mistake trusting Blackwell." Red Hawk froze. "You know nothing of our situation." "I know Blackwell," Catherine countered. "He used my family's desperation to force me here. He'll use your people's desperation the same way. He's not your ally. He's a predator waiting for the right moment to strike." "And why would I trust your words?" Red Hawk turned to face her, anger barely contained. "You are part of his scheme. His spy, perhaps." The accusation stung because she understood his reasoning. "If I were his spy, would I be warning you?" "You could be testing my loyalty, seeing if I will turn against the judge who holds power over us." Catherine stood, frustration boiling over. "I was forced into this marriage the same way you were. My uncle sold me to save himself, and Blackwell threatened me to ensure my compliance. I have no loyalty to him. I want him to fail as much as you do." Something shifted in Red Hawk's expression. Not trust, but a crack in his certainty. "If this is true, why tell me now?" "Because I'm tired of being helpless," Catherine said. "And because if I'm going to be trapped in this situation, I'd rather be fighting against our real enemy than each other." Red Hawk studied her for a long moment. Then, surprising her, he sat down across the fire. "What do you know of Blackwell's plans?" They talked until late into the night. Catherine shared what she'd overheard at the fort. Conversations between Blackwell and territorial officials about relocating the Apache to barren reservation land once the current agreements were signed. About selling the ceded hunting grounds to mining companies already. Red Hawk listened, his expression growing darker. Standing Bear suspects this, but has no proof. The other elders believe Blackwell's promises of protection. Then we need proof, Catherine said, and I might be able to get it. Red Hawk's eyes narrowed. How? Blackwell sees me as his creation, his tool. He won't suspect me of working against him. Catherine leaned forward. Let me go to the fort, offer to help with documents, translations, whatever excuse works. I can access his office, his papers. Too dangerous, Red Hawk cut her off. If he discovers you, he won't, because he thinks I'm broken. He thinks I'll do anything to avoid going back to the streets with no family and no prospects. Catherine held his gaze. Let me prove I'm more than what he made me. For the first time since their forced wedding, Red Hawk looked at her not as an unwanted obligation, but as a person. You would risk yourself for people who have given you nothing but coldness? I would risk myself to fight back against a man who treats human beings like chess pieces, Catherine replied. Your people didn't ask to be pawns any more than I did. After a long silence, Red Hawk nodded. Then we will do this carefully, and together. It was the first time he'd said we, as if it meant something. Catherine's plan required patience and careful performance. Over the next week, she made herself visible at the fort, helped the fort's school teacher with lessons for soldiers' children, offered to organize supply records that had fallen into chaos. Judge Blackwell noticed, as she'd intended. He called her to his office one afternoon, satisfaction oozing from his expression. Adapting well, I see, he remarked, gesturing for her to sit. Much better than that unfortunate attempt to flee in Santa Fe. Catherine kept her expression neutral. I've accepted my circumstances, Judge. There's no point in fighting what cannot be changed. Very wise. He leaned back in his chair. And how is your husband? The marriage serving its purpose? The question was a test. Catherine chose her words carefully. Red Hawk fulfills his obligations. The Apache accept my presence. Isn't that what you wanted? Blackwell smiled. Indeed. In fact, I may have additional opportunities for you to be useful. Standing Bear grows more resistant to the new treaty terms. Perhaps you could encourage your husband to persuade his uncle toward cooperation. Catherine's stomach churned, but she maintained her composure. I can try, though Red Hawk and I barely speak. Then make him speak to you, Blackwell said, his tone hardening. You're his wife. Use whatever means necessary. Or would you prefer I remind you of the alternatives? The threat was clear. Catherine lowered her eyes submissively. I understand. Good. Now, I need these supply requisitions organized alphabetically. They're a mess. He indicated a stack of papers on a side table. Take your time. Catherine moved to the papers, heart pounding. This was the access she needed. As she worked, she memorized the office layout, noting where Blackwell kept locked drawers and file boxes, planning her next move. That evening, she reported everything to Red Hawk in hushed tones while Pale Moon kept watch. He wants me to manipulate you, to help convince Standing Bear to sign. Red Hawk's expression darkened. And what did you tell him? That I would try. Catherine met his eyes. He believes I'll obey because I have no choice. That's what makes me useful. And dangerous, Red Hawk added. If he suspects betrayal, he won't. Not yet. Catherine pulled out a small piece of paper she'd managed to pocket. But I found something. It's just a fragment of a letter, but it mentions surveyor teams ready to deploy immediately following signature and mining rights secured through Eastern investors. Red Hawk took the paper, studying it in the firelight. This confirms our suspicions, but we need more. Something we can show the elders that proves Blackwell's deception. His locked drawers, Catherine said. That's where the real documents will be. I need a way to access them when he's not there. They planned carefully over the following days. Catherine continued her helpful presence at the fort, gradually earning trust from bored soldiers and overwhelmed administrators. She learned the judge's schedule when he rode out to inspect fort boundaries or meet with other officials. Meanwhile, something unexpected began happening. Working together toward a common goal, Catherine and Red Hawk started actually talking. Not as strangers forced together, but as allies discovering each other. Red Hawk told her about growing up watching his people's world shrink, about learning English and Spanish to better negotiate with encroaching settlers, only to realize language alone couldn't protect them. About the burden of being Standing Bear's nephew, expected to bridge two incompatible worlds. Catherine shared her own story more fully. Her mother's death when she was young. Her father drinking himself to death afterward. Being passed to an uncle who saw her as an inconvenient responsibility, then as a convenient solution to his own problems. "We have both been betrayed by those who should have protected us," Red Hawk observed one night. "But we're still here," Catherine replied. "Still fighting." "Yes," he agreed, and for the first time, she saw something like warmth in his eyes. Still fighting. Their marriage remained unconsummated, but the distance between them began to close. Small gestures marked the change. Red Hawk ensuring Catherine received the best portions of scarce food. Catherine mending his clothing without being asked. Conversations that lasted longer than necessity required. The other Apache noticed. Pale Moon smiled knowingly, but said nothing. The younger warriors stopped treating Catherine with open suspicion. Even Standing Bear acknowledged her with a nod when she brought water to the elders' council. But this growing connection made the risks even greater, because Catherine knew what came next, and the danger was real. The opportunity came 3 weeks after Catherine began her careful infiltration. Judge Blackwell left the fort to meet territorial officials in Tucson, a journey that would take at least 4 days. "This is our chance," Catherine told Red Hawk. "But I'll need help getting into his office after dark." Red Hawk had already planned for this. 2 Apache men sympathetic to their cause would create a distraction. A drunk and disorderly incident at the enlisted men's barracks that would draw the guards away from the administrative building. The night felt electric with tension. Catherine moved through shadows, her heart hammering as Red Hawk guided her to Blackwell's office window. He'd jimmied it open earlier, making it look like the latch had simply come loose. "I'm coming with you," he whispered when Catherine moved to climb through. "Too risky. If we're both caught, I will not let you face this danger alone." His tone left no room for argument. They slipped inside together, moving quickly to Blackwell's desk. Catherine's hands trembled as she picked the lock on the top drawer, a skill learned from a misspent youth she'd never told anyone about. The drawer opened. Inside were folders, contracts, correspondence. Catherine and Red Hawk worked by moonlight, filtering through windows, reading quickly, taking only documents they could memorize or conceal. What they found was worse than expected. Letters from mining companies offering Blackwell substantial payments for facilitating access to Apache lands. Contracts already drawn up for surveyor teams. Most damning, a map showing the proposed reservation boundaries, a rocky, waterless area where the Apache couldn't possibly survive, alongside notes about managed decline of native population through resource deprivation. It wasn't just theft, it was calculated genocide. Catherine's hand shook as she held the map. "This is murder. He's planning to kill them all slowly." Red Hawk's face was stone, but fury burned in his eyes. "We take these. Show Standing Bear and the council." They heard footsteps outside. The distraction was ending too soon. Red Hawk grabbed Catherine's hand, pulling her toward the window. They scrambled through just as the door handle turned. Racing across the darkened yard, they pressed themselves against a storage building as a patrol passed. When it was safe, they ran for the Apache camp, documents pressed against Catherine's chest beneath her shawl. Standing Bear convened an emergency council meeting at dawn. Catherine and Red Hawk presented everything they'd found, laying documents before the assembled elders. The reaction was explosive. Anger, betrayal, fierce debate about what action to take. Some wanted immediate retaliation. Others counseled caution, worried about the fort's superior weapons. Standing Bear studied the map for a long time, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he looked at Catherine. You risked much to bring us this truth. Why? Catherine chose her words carefully. Because what's being done to your people is wrong. Because I've been used as a tool of oppression, and I refuse to be that anymore. Because... She glanced at Red Hawk. Because I've learned that family isn't just blood. It's those who stand with you when it matters. Standing Bear nodded slowly. Then he turned to his nephew. And you, Red Hawk? You brought a white woman into our councils, into our confidence. Explain this. Red Hawk straightened. She is my wife, not by choice at first, but by choice now. She has proven herself worthy of trust, and she fights for our survival as fiercely as any warrior. Something passed between uncle and nephew. Respect, understanding, acceptance. Then we must act quickly, Standing Bear declared, before Blackwell returns and discovers his deception exposed. But they were already too late. Blackwell arrived back at the fort the next morning, a full day early, and he knew immediately that his office had been breached. Catherine was working with Pale Moon when soldiers surrounded the camp. The officer in charge, a captain named Hendricks, looked uncomfortable, but determined. By order of Judge Blackwell, Catherine Morgan and the Apache called Red Hawk are under arrest for theft and trespassing on government property. Red Hawk stepped forward, positioning himself between Catherine and the soldiers. On what evidence? Judge Blackwell's office was broken into. Documents are missing. You two were seen near the administrative building that night. Someone had betrayed them. Catherine's mind raced. Who had seen them? Who would report to Blackwell? Standing Bear intervened. This is Apache land, Captain. You have no authority here. The treaty you signed gives us jurisdiction over criminal matters, Hendricks replied grimly. I have my orders. Catherine saw Red Hawk's hand move toward the knife at his belt. If he resisted, the soldiers would have an excuse to open fire on the entire camp. She stepped forward before he could act. I'll come peacefully. But Red Hawk wasn't involved. This was my doing alone. No, Red Hawk said sharply. We both... Please, Catherine interrupted, meeting his eyes, willing him to understand. Your people need you here. Don't give them a reason to slaughter everyone. The conflict in his expression tore at her heart. But Standing Bear placed a hand on his nephew's shoulder, holding him back. As soldiers bound Catherine's wrists, she looked back at Red Hawk one last time. His face was anguished, furious, helpless. I will come for you, he called as they led her away. I swear it. Catherine was locked in a cell at the fort, facing charges that could mean hanging. Blackwell visited within hours, his rage barely controlled. You stupid, ungrateful girl, he hissed through the bars. I gave you everything, a place, a purpose, protection, and you betray me? You gave me slavery, Catherine shot back. You threatened and manipulated everyone involved, and I found proof of your real plan, to destroy the Apache through deliberate starvation. Blackwell's expression shifted from rage to calculation. Ah, you found my files. He almost smiled. Doesn't matter now. Those documents were not official. Merely theoretical planning. You have no proof of anything actionable. And when I'm done, you'll hang as a thief and a seditionist. The Apache have seen everything. They know the truth. The Apache, Blackwell said coldly, will do nothing. Because if they attempt any action against me or the fort, I'll call in cavalry from 3 territories and finish this problem permanently. They're trapped, and they know it. He left her with that terrible knowledge. He was right. The Apache couldn't attack the fort without bringing down massive retaliation. And Catherine couldn't expose his plans without evidence that would hold up in a white man's court. She'd risked everything and failed. Or had she? That night, as Catherine sat in her cell trying to formulate any kind of plan, a small sound came from the window. She looked up to see a familiar face peering through the bars. Red Hawk. Impossible, she whispered. The guards are dealing with a problem in the ammunition stores. Small fire, nothing serious, but distracting. He produced metal tools, working on the window bars. We have perhaps 10 minutes. You shouldn't be here. If you're caught, then I am caught, Red Hawk said firmly. I told you I would come for you. Did you think I speak empty words? The window bar came loose. Red Hawk reached through, grasping Catherine's hand. The touch sent electricity through her. I cannot fit through, he said regretfully. But others are creating a larger diversion. When it happens, the main door guard will leave his post. You run north toward the river canyon. Horses are hidden there. Can you do this? Catherine nodded, throat tight with emotion. Red Hawk's eyes held hers through the bars. When this is over, when you are safe, there is something I must tell you. Tell me now, Catherine urged. No, when you are free, when we have time. His hand tightened on hers. But know this. You are not my wife, because Blackwell decreed it. You are my wife because I choose you. I choose you, Catherine Morgan. Then he was gone, melting into shadows as shouts erupted from across the fort. Catherine's heart hammered. Minutes crawled by. Then, an explosion. The ammunition stores, fully involved now. Soldiers ran from all directions. The guard at her cell door hesitated, then ran toward the chaos. Catherine didn't waste a second. She grabbed the key from its hook. Red Hawk must have positioned it within reach, and freed herself. Racing through darkened corridors, she emerged into a fort, thrown into controlled chaos. No one noticed one woman running toward the north gate. She found the horses exactly where Red Hawk promised, along with supplies and a rifle. As she mounted, another figure materialized from the darkness. Pale Moon. Red Hawk said you would need guidance, the older woman said. I know the desert trails. Come. They rode hard through the night, putting miles between themselves and the fort. As dawn broke over Red Rock canyons, Pale Moon finally slowed. There is a place, she explained. The army believes it uninhabitable, too dry, too remote. But our people know water sources hidden in the rocks. Some of our band went there when the treaties began. We will join them. And Red Hawk? Will meet us when he can. He stays to help Standing Bear manage Blackwell's reaction, but he will come. They traveled for 3 days through landscape that would kill anyone who didn't know its secrets. Pale Moon moved with quiet confidence, finding water in places Catherine would have ridden past, reading signs in rock and plant that told her where to go. On the 4th day, they reached a hidden valley where perhaps 40 Apache had created a secret camp. Not enough to threaten the army, but enough to preserve their way of life beyond white control. The people welcomed Catherine warily, but accepted Pale Moon's endorsement. She was given a small dwelling and tasks to contribute: tanning hides, gathering desert plants, helping with children. She waited for Red Hawk with growing anxiety. Days passed with no word. Then a week. Finally, on the 10th day after her escape, he appeared. Catherine saw him first, riding into camp on a tired horse. She ran to him without thinking, and he dismounted in time to catch her. They held each other in silence, letting the embrace say what words couldn't. When they finally separated, Red Hawk's face was grave. Blackwell has convinced the territorial governor that the Apache violated the treaty by helping you escape. New terms are being demanded. Harsher restrictions. I've made everything worse, Catherine said, anguish flooding through her. No, Red Hawk said firmly. You exposed the truth. Now Standing Bear and the other elders know exactly what they face. Some chose to sign the new treaties and move to the reservation. Others chose to join us here. Both groups made informed decisions based on truth, not manipulation. What about you? You can't stay here forever. Red Hawk pulled something from his saddlebag, a packet of documents. Before I left, I made copies of Blackwell's files, not the originals you took, but new documents I found that are even more incriminating. Letters to territorial officials revealing he's been taking bribes from mining interests. Evidence of fraud in government contracts. Catherine stared at the papers. This could destroy him. If presented to the right authorities, yes. Red Hawk met her eyes. The territorial marshal is known to be honest. If these documents reach him, Blackwell will face prosecution. But how? We can't exactly walk into a marshal's office. Red Hawk smiled slightly. No. But you can send them anonymously from a town far from here, with a letter explaining their source and significance. Over the following weeks they carefully planned. Catherine would travel to Santa Fe, the city where she'd once tried to flee, accompanied by 2 Apache scouts who would remain hidden. She would deliver the documents to the territorial marshal's office, then disappear before questions could be asked. It was dangerous, but it was their best chance to stop Blackwell permanently. The night before Catherine left, she and Red Hawk sat together under brilliant desert stars. The hidden valley around them was quiet except for distant coyote songs. "When I return," Catherine said softly. "What happens then?" Red Hawk took her hand. "Then we decide together where our path leads. Not Blackwell. Not your uncle. Not my people's expectations. Just us." "I want to stay with you," Catherine said. "Here, or wherever you go. I know our marriage began as a prison, but it's become my freedom. Does that make sense?" "Yes," Red Hawk replied, "because it is the same for me." He turned to face her fully. "I was trapped by duty, by anger, by fear. You showed me another way. You chose to fight not just for yourself, but for people who gave you nothing. That courage changed me." Their kiss was inevitable, gentle and searching at first, then deepening with months of unspoken longing. When they finally drew apart, Red Hawk touched her face with reverence. "Come back to me," he said simply. "Always," Catherine promised. The journey to Santa Fe took 2 weeks. Catherine traveled as a widow merchant, explaining her presence with fabricated stories of a husband killed by bandits. The Apache scouts shadowed her route invisibly, ensuring her safety. In Santa Fe, Catherine delivered the documents directly to Marshal Thompson, a stern man with a reputation for incorruptibility. She provided a detailed but anonymous account of Blackwell's crimes, then left before he could question her extensively. Within days, news spread that Judge Cyrus Blackwell had been arrested on multiple charges, including fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. The scandal reached all the way to the territorial governor's office. Catherine learned this from a newspaper she bought before leaving the city. Reading the article, relief and vindication flooded through her. Blackwell's scheme had collapsed. The new treaties he'd forced through were suspended pending investigation. The Apache who'd been moved to the barren reservation land were allowed to return to their original territories while officials reviewed the fraudulent agreements. It wasn't perfect justice. The world hadn't suddenly become fair. But it was something. And it was enough. Catherine returned to the hidden valley to find it transformed. Word of Blackwell's arrest had spread, and Apache families who'd been scattered were trickling back, bringing news and supplies. The camp buzzed with cautious optimism. Red Hawk swept her into his arms the moment she arrived, holding her like he'd never let go. That night, the camp held a celebration. For the first time since Catherine's arrival in Apache territory, she felt genuinely welcomed. Women she'd worked beside smiled warmly. Warriors who'd once viewed her with suspicion offered respectful nods. Standing Bear approached her and Red Hawk as they sat together by the fire. "You have brought honor to our family," the elder said to Catherine. "You fought for people not your own, risked your life for our freedom. You are truly Red Hawk's wife, and truly one of our people." Catherine's eyes stung with emotion. "Thank you, grandfather." Later, in the dwelling they now shared, Red Hawk and Catherine lay together properly for the first time. Their joining was tender, unhurried, laden with meaning that transcended physical desire. "I choose you," Red Hawk murmured against her hair afterward. "Not because of treaties or schemes or duties. I choose you because of who you are. Because you chose yourself when no one else would." Catherine turned in his arms to face him. "We were both pawns in someone else's game, but we found a way to become players instead. Together." "Together," Red Hawk agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. Months passed. The Hidden Valley settlement grew as Apache families continued to arrive. Some brought news that Blackwell had been sentenced to prison. Others reported that new officials were attempting more honest negotiations regarding land rights. The victories were small and fragile. The pressures on Apache land and sovereignty would continue for decades. But for now, this community had space to breathe, to live according to their own ways. Catherine learned she was pregnant in early spring. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. Bringing a child into such an uncertain world seemed almost reckless. But Red Hawk's face when she told him erased every doubt. His hand on her still flat belly was reverent. "Our child will know both worlds," he said softly, "and will choose their own path between them." As summer approached, Catherine stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, one hand resting on her growing belly. Red Hawk appeared beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Staying here? You could have disappeared in Santa Fe, started fresh somewhere else." Catherine leaned into him. "Every morning I wake up next to you is proof I made the right choice. We didn't choose how we came together, but we chose everything that came after. Even the hard parts?" "Especially those," Catherine replied. "Anyone can stay when things are easy. We stayed when it mattered." In the valley below, children played while women prepared evening meals. Horses grazed in a hidden pasture. Men returned from hunting, their laughter carrying on the desert wind. It wasn't the life Catherine had imagined in her youth. It was harder, more uncertain, demanding more strength than she'd known she possessed. But it was hers. Theirs. Built not on manipulation and force, but on choice and courage and a love that grew from the most unlikely soil. Red Hawk turned her to face him, his eyes reflecting the setting sun. "When our child asks how we came to be together, what will you tell them?" Catherine smiled. "The truth. That we were forced together by lies and manipulation. That we resisted and fought and nearly destroyed each other. That we almost let bitterness win. And then? And then we chose differently. We chose to fight the real enemy instead of each other. We chose to build something new from broken pieces. We chose love over resentment, hope over despair." Red Hawk kissed her forehead tenderly. "A good story." "The best kind," Catherine agreed. "Because it's true." As twilight settled over the hidden valley, they walked back down to their home together. Two people who'd been trapped by circumstances beyond their control, but who'd found freedom in choosing each other. Their journey from forced marriage to genuine love hadn't been easy or quick. It had required risk, sacrifice, courage, and the willingness to see past what they'd been taught about each other. But every step had been worth it, because in the end, they'd reclaimed something precious that others had tried to steal. Their right to choose their own destiny, and they'd chosen each other. If this story of manipulation overcome by courage, of two prisoners who became partners, of a love forged in the crucible of injustice moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like and let me know in the comments. Could you have trusted someone forced into your life by lies? Would you have taken the risks Catherine did? Share your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next story where love and survival collide in impossible circumstances.